They found him lying face down, arms frozen mid-reach, as if he'd been trying to crawl out of time itself. No coffin, no ceremony, just ice. 5,300 years of it. High in the Ötzi Alps, two hikers stumbled upon what they thought was just another fallen climber, a tragic accident. But when the rescue team arrived, they didn't find modern gear or nylon clothing. They found a copper axe and skin, leathery but intact. Hair still clinging to his scalp. Tattoos burned into flesh that shouldn't have survived even a single winter. This wasn't a mountaineer. This was something else. Ötzi, as he'd come to be called, became the oldest preserved human ever discovered in Europe. A time capsule. His weapons, his meals, even the pollen in his lungs, still clinging like whispers from the past. But here's where it gets strange. He didn't match the narrative. Not a tribal hunter. Not a roaming gatherer from the Mesolithic wilds. Not even a Bronze Age warrior chasing conquest. His DNA? It didn't fit. When scientists sequenced his genome, they expected to find familiar markers, those ancestral signatures we see in modern Europeans, a blend of steppe nomads, early farmers, and indigenous hunter-gatherers. But Ötzi, he was missing one of the key players. The steppe ancestry, the same Indo-European bloodline thought to shape language, culture, even war horses across Europe, wasn't there. It's like pulling a thread from a tapestry and realizing the pattern's all wrong. Was he isolated? A genetic relic left behind? Or does Ötzi whisper a deeper truth, that the people we thought were Europe's founders came later? And then came the shock that rattled even the experts, his closest genetic matches today. Not the people living in Austria or Germany, but Sardinians, thousands of kilometers away, on a Mediterranean island, a frozen corpse in the Alps with DNA rooted in the sea. This wasn't just an archaeological find. This was a ghost pressing his fingerprint onto our story and quietly asking, have you misunderstood your ancestors? Because Ötzi's genome would challenge not just history books. It would rewrite the story of European origins. He should have turned to dust, buried in snow, battered by storms, bitten by ice for over 50 centuries. His body should have vanished into the soil. But instead he waited. Ötzi wasn't mummified by human hands. He was preserved by nature's own ritual, a deep freeze so perfect, it turned his corpse into a genetic vault. Blood cells still intact, stomach contents sealed, DNA locked inside his bones like sacred text frozen in amber. But when scientists first tried to read that code, it didn't cooperate. The early labs were full of hope, but the results were messy. Contamination from modern human handlers, every breath, every fingerprint, clouded the truth. It was like trying to hear a whisper through a storm of static. Years passed. Fragments were mapped, stories teased, but the full picture refused to emerge. Until 2023. That's when everything changed. A new generation of sequencing tools, ultra-precise, contamination-proof, finally cracked the silence. No guesswork, no background noise. Just a clear, uninterrupted voice from a man dead 5,300 years. And what it said wasn't expected. Ötzi wasn't a rough prototype of modern Europeans. He was a closed chapter, a genetic outlier. His DNA wasn't just rare, it was nearly extinct. Like opening a tomb and finding a script no one alive could read anymore. Imagine the scene, sleek glass labs glowing with data, while just kilometers away, jagged alpine winds still howl over the spot where he fell. Science and ice, past and present, a body on a mountain, and a genome that rewrote the rules. Because this wasn't just better data. This was a time machine. A full sequence, pure and complete, untouched by migrations, untouched by empires. A snapshot of a Europe before the Indo-Europeans, before the steppe, before the stories we thought we knew. And that breakthrough didn't just illuminate Ötzi. It exposed a hidden ancestry, one buried, forgotten, nearly erased. But what the genome revealed was even more shocking. A lineage almost lost to time. He didn't belong to the new world rising around him. While Europe stirred with waves of change, horse-riding herders from the east, tribes mingling in blood and fire, Ötzi walked alone. Or rather, with ghosts. Because buried inside his cells was a secret most didn't expect. Over 90% of his genome, not hybrid, not mixed, traced back to one ancient source. The early Anatolian farmers, Migrants who, thousands of years before Ötzi took his final breath, had carried seeds and stories across the Bosphorus and changed the face of Europe. But by Ötzi's time, that world was fading. Across the continent, those early farmers had blended with local hunter-gatherers. Then came the thunder of the steppe, Yamnaya horsemen and their language-shaping, culture-forging legacy. Everywhere, bloodlines were shifting. Except here. In the high, cold silence of the Alps, something had survived. The peaks formed a barrier, not just against weather, but against time. While the valleys below churned with newcomers, this place became a genetic echo chamber, preserving a people whose world was slowly disappearing. Ötzi wasn't a hybrid. He was a holdout, a living fossil from a forgotten age, walking a landscape that no longer mirrored his genes. His tools were Copper Age, but his DNA? Neolithic, pure and hauntingly so. What does it feel like to be the last of your kind, without knowing? He carried with him the weight of ancestors who once reshaped Europe, and yet in him, they were fading. His genome wasn't the future. It was the final verse of a song almost no one could hear anymore. And tucked deep inside that frozen body, beneath the bones, beneath the blood, was a maternal lineage. A motherline passed down generation after generation until him. And then silence. Because what Ötzi carried in his mitochondrial DNA wasn't just rare, it was doomed. And soon, it would vanish from the earth entirely. A ghost strand, slipping through history's fingers. But his maternal lineage would vanish entirely, a silent extinction buried in his DNA. Her voice is gone. Not quiet, not fading. Gone. Inside Ötzi's cells, wrapped in the delicate helix of mitochondrial DNA, was a motherline, passed from mother to child, across hundreds of generations, until it reached him, and then ended. K1F, a code whispered down through time, unique to Ötzi, not rare, extinct. No living human carries it now. No daughter, no descendant. A matrilineal branch snapped so cleanly, it left no echo, as if a whole bloodline was swallowed by the mountains that kept it alive for so long. This wasn't an accident. It was a slow erasure. A small alpine community, tucked between glaciers and sky, isolated, cut off. They farmed, they climbed, they buried their dead in silence. And generation by generation, they dwindled. No migration, no mixing, just stillness. While Europe changed, while empires clashed, while languages shifted and borders bled, this one thread remained untouched. Until it couldn't. And that's where Ötzi's tragedy deepens. Because his paternal lineage, his father line, didn't disappear. Some men today still carry its signature. A Y chromosome fingerprint echoing through time, stubbornly alive. It's like finding one half of a family still singing, while the other has fallen completely silent. Why does one line endure, and the other fade into ash? Why do some bloodlines stretch endlessly into the present, while others collapse under the weight of history? It's more than biology. It's memory, identity. A mother's face, forgotten by the world. We will never know her name, never hear her language, never see the eyes that passed into Ötzi's. All we have is a code, and the knowledge that it ends with him. But the question still haunts the ice. Why did one lineage survive, and the other vanish? The answer lies deep in Europe's turbulent past. He should have disappeared like the rest of them. A man sealed in ice for 5,300 years, his people forgotten, his language erased, his world shattered by waves of migration. And yet, something of him survived. His paternal line. G2AL91. A dry scientific label, maybe, but inside it a pulse. A legacy. It's the same marker found in the bones of Neolithic farmers across the ancient Mediterranean. And incredibly, it still lives today. Not in the snowy Alps where Ötzi fell, but on islands kissed by the sea. Sardinia, Corsica, two sunlit worlds where olive trees twist in silence, and genes linger like old songs. Scientists expected his DNA to end in silence, like his motherline did. But instead, they found a match. Not exact, but close. A living echo of a man from the Copper Age, beating inside the blood of modern islanders. It was as if time had folded in on itself. How? Because while mainland Europe was reshaped by horse riders, metalworkers, and empire after empire, Sardinia stood still. No mass migrations, No great battles of blood and language. Just isolation. Just continuity. Trade came and went. Cultures touched the shores. But the core stayed. And in that stillness, ancient genes like Ötzi's endured. Imagine that, a fisherman in Sardinia today, unaware that the map of his Y chromosome whispers of alpine glaciers and ancient grain fields, of a man who died alone, pierced by an arrow, but whose father line didn't. A thread pulled tight across 5 millennia, unbroken. It's a kind of time travel you can't see, but you can feel. And suddenly, the story isn't just about one frozen man. It's about what survives and what doesn't. Because that same genetic thread, the one Ötzi passed on, it tells more than a story of survival. It reveals a map of replacement, of loss, and the unsettling truth that identity is fragile. But this genetic link also tells a story of survival and replacement, raising new questions about identity and loss. The face we imagined was wrong. Not rugged and pale like a mythic mountain warrior. Not the blue-eyed, blonde-haired hunter of fantasy illustrations. Ötzi, the Iceman, had dark skin. Darker than most Europeans today. Eyes the color of chestnuts. And under that for a cap? A bald scalp, bare from early male pattern loss. No flowing locks. No heroic mane. Just the quiet erosion of time, written in his genes. It shocked the world. Because we don't just see ancient people through science, we see them through story. And for decades, our story painted Ötzi as something he wasn't. A prototype of the modern European. A mountain-born Aryan icon. But DNA doesn't care about myth. His genome revealed a truth far older and more complex. Skin tone, eye color, hair, they evolved slowly. And in Ötzi's time, the palette of Europe was still shifting. Melanin was still common. Light features were rare. And the Alps? They weren't home to snow-white silhouettes. They were home to farmers with earth-toned skin, sculpted not by race, but by generations of sun, altitude, and survival. He didn't look like us. He looked like himself. And still, we try to remake him in our image. Because confronting that difference forces us to rethink our place in the timeline. What else have we imagined wrong? What if the faces of our ancestors don't match the mirrors we've built? In 2023, researchers used his full genome to reconstruct his true face. Not a guess. Not a statue carved from bias. But a digital resurrection, pixel by pixel, gene by gene. And when the image emerged, it wasn't familiar. It was honest. Not better. Not worse. Just real. Because beneath every myth is a person the story forgot to see. But the Iceman story goes beyond looks. It is a story written in health and disease. His bones were strong. His muscles lean. He climbed mountains, hunted deer, carried fire and copper across the sky. But inside him a storm. Ötzi, the Iceman, was not the picture of perfect prehistoric health. Beneath his hardened frame, his genome told a different story. One filled with quiet betrayals. A genetic ticking clock. He carried markers for heart disease, thickening arteries, even in youth. A body built for endurance, laced with fragility. Type 2 diabetes. A tendency toward obesity. Not from sugar or excess, but written in his blood, long before the modern world could blame it on fast food or screens. And then came the parasites. Inside his gut, scientists found the twisted remnants of Borrelia burgdorferi, the bacteria behind Lyme disease. Ötzi didn't just carry it. He's the oldest confirmed human case in history. Thousands of years before we named it, before we feared it, he suffered it. Fever, pain, that gnawing ache in the joints that doesn't let go. This wasn't just an ancient corpse. It was a man living with invisible enemies. We imagine the past as raw, but clean, untouched by modern sickness. But Ötzi proves otherwise. Disease is not a new invention. It walked beside him, slept in his blood, bit him in the tall grass and stayed. And yet he moved. Through mountain passes, across ridgelines dusted with snow, with cholesterol clogging his heart, and pathogens festering inside him, he walked. What does it mean, to be that vulnerable? To live in a world with no hospitals, no antibiotics, only instinct and endurance? His genome blurs the line we draw between ancient and modern, between strength and suffering, because health was never guaranteed. Not even for the Iceman. He was resilient, yes, but not invincible. And as his body fought invisible enemies, so too did his DNA carry secrets of Europe's forgotten peoples. He died alone, but his DNA spoke volumes. Not just about him, but about a world that no longer exists. Ötzi's genome isn't just a relic. It's a time capsule, sealed before the great upheavals, before the Indo-European wave swept across the continent, before horses thundered westward, before languages spread like wildfire. He was Europe before Europe changed. The genetic map we know today, it didn't look like this in Ötzi's time. His DNA carries no trace of the steppe herders who would later redefine ancestry across the continent. No signs of the massive demographic shifts that buried earlier peoples beneath layers of genetic sediment. What he carried was untouched, a Rosetta Stone of blood and bone, holding the key to what came before, to the farmers who brought wheat and barley, but also rituals, beliefs, entire ways of life. A population that once flourished, then faded, replaced, absorbed. Ötzi's genome breaks the silence. It tells us that Europe wasn't a singular story, but many. Not a smooth evolution, but a series of collisions, isolation, bottlenecks, extinctions, threads that snapped, and others that endured in the unlikeliest places. Like a forgotten dialect, spoken only on one mountaintop. It's a paradox. How much of our identity comes from those who disappeared? The Copper Age man frozen in the Alps didn't shape modern Europe through legacy. He shaped it through memory, a record of what was lost and what still lingers. And maybe that's the real story Ötzi leaves behind. That even the quietest lives, the ones erased by time, by conquest, by climate, still hold answers, still anchor us to the deep past. But Ötzi's genome is just one piece of a vast, still mysterious puzzle. The Alps don't just divide nations, they divide memory. For thousands of years, these jagged spines of ice and stone carved Europe, not only in landscape, but in blood. They trapped people, shielded them, preserved them, and erased them. Ötzi's community was one of many. Small, isolated, clinging to narrow valleys, where winds howled like warnings, and every season tested the will to survive. No roads, no cavalry, just ritual and rhythm, and silence. That isolation was both gift and sentence. It protected their genes, let their story whisper across centuries untouched by the tidal waves of migration. But it also sealed their fate. When change came, they didn't have numbers. They didn't have power. They had memory, and then they had disappearance. Genetics tells us what stories survive. Geography decides who gets to tell them. In the great sweep of European history, most of the attention goes to movement, to the bold ones who rode in from the steppe, to the farmers who spread from Anatolia. But just as powerful are the still ones, the forgotten ones, the people who stayed long enough to be buried in ice. In Ötzi's frozen veins are the echoes of that stillness. The cost of belonging to one place so completely that the outside world never notices when you're gone. What does ancestry mean when no one remembers the ancestors? Are we shaped more by the migrations we come from, or by the silences we inherit? Beneath these mountains lie countless others like him. Voices cut off, lines that ended in a blizzard, cultures with no names. But they lived, they bled, they loved, they prayed beneath stars that haven't moved. And now their genes wait, not in tombs, in us. Because every test, every sequence, every unexpected marker is a knock from the past, asking, do you remember me? What other genetic ghosts wait to be discovered, and how will they reshape our understanding of ourselves? What if your blood remembers things your mind never knew? What if inside you, buried deeper than memory, lives a name that was never spoken, a place you've never been, a face you'll never see, but that shaped you anyway? Ötzi never asked to be remembered. He didn't know that his fall in the snow would become a message in a bottle, drifting not across oceans, but across millennia. And when that bottle was opened, what spilled out wasn't just science. It was identity, a vanished motherline, a still surviving fatherline, a ghost tribe held together by ice and silence. And yet, the most haunting part isn't what we've learned, it's what we still don't know. Because if one man, from one glacier, could shake the story of an entire continent, What else waits beneath the dirt? How many forgotten migrations still echo in our bones? How many ancient faces look out through modern eyes, unrecognized? We think of history as something behind us, linear, closed. But DNA laughs at timelines. It coils back, loops collides. And just when you think the story is over, it begins again. Somewhere, another genome is being sequenced. Another fragment of bone lifted from the earth. Another whisper of who we were. And every new discovery rewrites the ending. So now, the question isn't just who was Ötzi. The question is, who are you? What ancestors stand silent inside you, waiting to be heard? What if your DNA isn't just inheritance, but invitation? Because the story of human identity is unfinished, and Ötzi's frozen genome is only the beginning.